Public hearing. 235 George Street, Dialysis Clinic, Inc., ZB-2019-02, site plan, use and bulk variance application for the construction of a new medical dialysis clinic with accessory parking areas in the C-2A and R5-A zones at 235 George Street, 52 Tabernacle, 64 Abeal Street, Block 126, lots 3.001, 7, and 8.01.
Mr. Chairman, members, for the record, Larry Kiley on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Chairman, before we get started, I spoke to your counsel and your planning director a few times. I know there's only 4 board members here. We've got a use variance component, so we need 5 votes. So we can start tonight, we can never vote tonight. The board is also continuing to review our recently amended plans. We endeavored to secure more property and more parking, and we did. So plans were amended, slight tweaks, nevertheless amended, and we've had them for less than 2 weeks or so. So what we think might be prudent tonight, if the board would allow it, is to, and our full team of witnesses is here. We have engineering, traffic, architectural, and planning that you'll hear from. It might be a little premature to go through that testimony this evening. Your consultants believe that, and that'd be fine. So we'd like to go through operations. We want to give the board a sense as to what DCI is and does, what dialysis treatment involves. The board may very well know you may have loved ones or relatives that get treatment, but a good overview is worthwhile. It'll give you a sense as to what we're setting up for the balance of our expert testimony. So tonight what we'd like to do is at least start with operational testimony from one of our representatives from Dialysis Clinic, Inc., if the board would allow it. That's our goal. Very good. So before we do get started though, just very briefly, we're here before this board because we're technically a D variance relief. We are in a split zone. Okay. We're partially commercial, partially residential zone. We're comprised of 4 building lots. We're acquiring these lots from 2 separate property owners. Big undertaking on the part of the applicant. The applicant provides kidney care throughout the country. They've got a growing presence in New Jersey. Highly regulated medical field that they're in. They're regulated by the State Department of Health, State Department of Community Affairs, above and beyond the municipal level. The applicant is looking to purchase this property, adaptively reuse it, and build their new dialysis clinic on this property. Funky lot, triangular shaped lot we're dealing with multiple street frontages, not all that much parking. The good thing is dialysis treatment, you don't need all that much parking for your people, our patients that we serve. You'll hear why shortly, but that shortfall is not a very big issue for us, and we think we can overcome it. But we have D-variance relief. Now, you'll hear from our planner eventually that we're an inherently beneficial use, and we're akin to religious institutions, educational institutions, and hospitals for the purpose of a public welfare standpoint, as the positive criteria goes, but nevertheless, we still have D-variance relief. And there's a slew of bulk variance relief that goes along with the fact that we've got, albeit an oversized property, a lot of shortcomings, parking being maybe the main one. But DCI, a nonprofit, looks to purchase these properties, create the assemblage, merge these lots into one for one large oversized lot to operate as this medical facility for DCI. What you'll hear eventually will be, like I said, from our civil engineers to the site layout. There's significant site improvements they're proposing. Nice architectural building, ground-up construction from our architect. Traffic engineering to allay any concerns there may be on parking standards. And of course, planning to discuss the variances. But tonight our limited testimony, Mr. Chairman, members, will be Bob Motaki, our operator from DCI. We'll take you through a tour of what you would see here if this were approved, day-to-day operations, by way of patients visiting, by way of staff working, and by way of just the general happenings on this property, if this board voted to approve it. Okay? Good. Come on up. Okay. We're going to swear you in first.
Okay.
Please state your name, spell your last name.
My name is Robert Motaki. The spelling of my last name is M-O-T-A-C-K-I.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very briefly for the board, your background and affiliation with DCI.
Okay. My name is Robert Motaki. I'm the Area Operations Director for DCI here in New Jersey. I've been with DCI now for 22 years. I've been in dialysis for approximately 30 years prior to coming to Dialysis Clinic, Inc. I just want to tell you a little bit about DCI as a company. Sorry. We are the largest nonprofit dialysis provider in the United States. We were founded in 1971, and we've had consistent ownership since the inception. We serve over 19,000 patients with chronic kidney disease, 15,000 of these patients are on dialysis. They may be on home care dialysis or in-center hemodialysis, which I'll explain in a bit. And we have over 240 clinics nationwide in 26 states. Our mission statement is, we are a non-for-profit organization and the care of our patient is the reason for our existence. So I'm hoping I'm only going to refer to some notes. First of all, I wanted to mention that DCI does not have a marketing department. We need to be invited into wherever the need is for dialysis or dialysis care. We were invited to establish a partnership with Rutgers Medical School Division of Nephrology. So when we decided to choose this site, we took the chief of nephrology around to a couple sites, and he felt that this site is probably the most appropriate for dialysis in this particular area, and with our affiliation with the Rutgers Medical School Division of Nephrology. Right now in New Jersey, we have 4 dialysis units. We have one in Somerset, we have one in North Brunswick, we have another one in Monroe Township, and also we have one at Central State Hospital within their ambulatory care building. So we have 4 dialysis units. We also have 2 hospital programs that we're responsible for, where we provide dialysis to patients that are in the hospital, acute patients. We have an affiliation with St. Peter's University Medical Center and also Central State Medical Center, where we perform acute dialysis for the patients that are in the hospital. I'm just briefly going to give a little scenario about the importance of dialysis, and if some of you know this, I apologize, but kidneys are important organs in the body that provide a variety of important functions. They remove waste products, toxins, and excess fluid. They also regulate various chemicals and also blood pressure, which is extremely important. When the kidneys start to fail and they can no longer maintain health, patients need to decide on what they want to do next, and usually, most likely, patients choose dialysis. So there's three modalities that the patient can choose. They could choose hemodialysis, which I'll get into in a minute, peritoneal dialysis, or we try to get patients transplanted. So there's three areas that the patient will be able to, in order to sustain life, have those options. So I'm just briefly going to explain hemodialysis, which is one of the avenues that we want to perform in this new dialysis unit. And hemodialysis is a treatment that will be offered in this unit. It's under a physician's jurisdiction. In other words, the physician will write the prescription, and the dialysis is performed under the prescription of a physician. Patients, inpatient dialysis, or chronic patients that go on dialysis, that go in center, which would be this unit, they require dialysis 3 times a week, and it varies, again, according to the prescription, by 3 hours up to 4 hours. So a patient goes on a dialysis machine, there's a dialyzer, which we call the artificial kidney, and the patient's blood is filtered through that 3 times a week, again, depending on the prescription. Now, that in the unit, when the patient goes on dialysis, especially on hemodialysis, there's a nurse manager in the unit, there's a registered nurse or 2 registered nurses, depending on the size of the unit and the number of patients that we have. And in addition to that, we have ancillary staff. We have an equipment technician that monitors the water and takes care of the equipment. The social worker and dietitian, extremely important for the patient in dialysis. But those 2 individuals are usually transient. They come in a couple times a week, depending on the size of the unit. So again, the dialysis healthcare team are individuals trained in the treatment of patients with chronic renal failure. This includes the nephrologist, the medical director, the nurse manager, nurses, patient care technicians, and the ancillary staff that I mentioned. There's another type of dialysis. In fact, Medicare is actually promoting it more and more for patients. It's called home dialysis or peritoneal dialysis. And in peritoneal dialysis, there's no blood that comes out of the patient. It's done, it's basically a catheter is put into the belly. The peritoneum acts as a filter. So what we do is we train patients to do this at home. The training usually takes about 5 days. Patients discharge. What happens is there's dialysate that's put into the belly, if you will, into the peritoneum, and through osmosis, the bad toxins and excess fluid come out, and then the patient does these exchanges 4 or 5 times a day. Now, what that allows is it's more flexibility for the patient because he could travel with it. He could also have more independence because he's going to be mimicking the kidney a little bit more with with hemodialysis, because he's going to be doing this 6 days a week. So those are the 2 areas that we want to institute in that dialysis unit on George Street.
Before you continue, Bob, just to confirm, all of our patients are outpatient treatment.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a few hours a day.
Yeah, I apologize. All our patients are outpatients. And as I said, the patients that come in for the hemodialysis, they will go on dialysis for 4 hours 3 times a week. Those that are on peritoneal dialysis, after training, they will do the dialysis at home. In addition, those patients that are on peritoneal dialysis with dialysis at home, they're required to come into the unit twice a month, once for some blood work, and then at the end of the month, or when the blood work becomes available and the physician is available, the patient will come in, meet with the nephrologist, the nurse, the dietitian, and social worker if necessary, but they will definitely meet with the physician, the nurse, and the dietitian. And as Larry mentioned, the Center for Medicare Services and the New Jersey Department of Health regulate us and also license us to do dialysis. The Survey and Certification Program under Medicare certifies ESRD facilities for inclusion into the Medicare program by validating the care and the services, and it's called under the conditions of coverage. So before we open the unit, and once we open the unit, Medicare monitors us on a regular basis through usually a state survey to determine that we are meeting the conditions of coverage to provide dialysis to our patients. In addition, we're also licensed by the New Jersey Department of Health. They also will license us as well, as Larry had mentioned. If this project is approved, we plan on opening up 18 hemodialysis units. And at the onset, we're not going to have that many patients coming in until we get the program going. So initially, we would probably have 6 patients on the first shift, and this is at the start, and 6 patients on the second shift. So we'd have 2 shifts of patients. That would be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we'd have 2 shifts of clinical staff. That would be the nurse manager, the RN, the patient care techs, and the social worker and dietitian as necessary.
So Bob, just to take a step back, when you say 18 units, you essentially mean the patient chairs, as I call them,
Yes.
seen on the architectural
I'm sorry,
plans.
yes.
Those stations, each one serves one patient for their 3 to 4 hour treatment, whatever they're prescribed, and then that patient will depart the building, go home.
Right, right.
And we might have 2 shifts a day,
To start, yes, 2 shifts a
and
day.
it will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
and eventually maybe a shift or 2 on Tuesday, Thursday,
Right,
Saturday.
as the census begins to build and the need begins to build, then we'd open up more shifts. But that's the way we'll initially start out.
So before we go forward,
Sure.
you described the service that our staff provides, the different services that each staff member contributes to the patient care. What would you say is the total number of staff you would expect at a given shift?
At any given time, it would be 4, 5, 6, the physician, maximum of 8 at the onset.
Maximum of 8.
At the onset, correct. And then, of course, as time goes on and we do more treatments and treat more patients, then that staffing ratio would change. Staffing ratio is actually based on New Jersey Department of Health regulations. Is there anything else?
No, continue.
Okay, yeah,
I'll ask you some
okay.
questions as we move forward.
One thing that we try to do, which I think is really beneficial to this unit, is we try to discourage patients from driving. About 30% of patients do drive, but where this unit is located, especially with the transportation that New Brunswick provides, it may be a little bit easier for patients to be dropped off to have dialysis. And in addition, I believe we have public transportation going across George Street, so patients could actually use public transportation if they had to. We try to have ease of operations so that the patients, they're brought in by ambulette, a family member may drop them off, a friend may drop them off, and then they'll enter the dialysis unit. The car leaves, patient's brought in, and the patient's put on the machine through the nurse and the patient care techs.
So Bob, if brought in by a family member or a loved one,
Right.
do you normally see that that loved one tries to stay while the patient's getting treatment
No, a lot of times they just leave.
because of the amount of hours?
Yeah,
they're
because
involved?
the average treatment is 3.5 to 4 hours. Now, occasionally, somebody may stay, but most of the people that are dropped off, or most of the drop-offs are, people leave the area.
So whether it's a loved one dropping someone off or an ambulance, what would you say is the typical turnaround time you experience at the facilities for that maneuver to happen?
I guess depending on the acuity of the patient, if the patient's able to walk and ambulate, it's a minute or two. If there's a wheelchair that's involved, you're talking maybe 5-6 minutes to get the patient into the unit, comfortable in the waiting room, and then the ambulance would leave with it. So about 5 minutes, 6 minutes, depending on the physical condition of the patient.
Okay.
I've got some people brought in by taxi as well. As far as deliveries go, the dialysis unit usually has a tractor trailer that will drop off the majority of supplies that we need to provide the dialysis. And at the onset, that's probably once every 2 weeks. Medications, Band-Aids, things of that nature, usually dropped off by a box truck type individual that will drop those products off. Parcel posts will drop products off too. And then we also have medical waste, which is really important. So the medical waste is contained, and the medical waste contractor comes in, takes the medical waste out, and then gives us new receptacles to put the medical waste in. And then of course we have regular garbage. We're very strict about medical waste, obviously. Initially, you're talking about once a week. Over time, it could be 2 times a week, and at capacity, usually 3 times a week. And that truck's a little bit bigger than, let's say, a parcel post truck, but not as big as a tractor trailer.
And they're also regulated carriers, the medical waste.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely regulated. We're using New Jersey regulated medical waste.
And I believe it's on the plans, but that waste is within the building confines.
Everything's, yeah, we're required by the state to have a medical waste area. So when the medical waste is put in at the end of the night, it goes into a special area that's locked. And then when the medical waste company comes, the nurse manager will open up the area. They'll take out the medical waste, the needles, and then supply us with new receptacles.
And aside from the medical waste, the balance of the refuse and recycling that we generate, would you liken it to office type trash?
Yeah, office, yeah, it's usually the boxes that we have to get rid of with all the product in it. So it's mostly boxes that we're getting rid of, and whatever debris might be in the garbage or in the lobby or in the various offices.
Okay.
So that kind of takes me through.
So a few more things. I
Sure.
proffered to the board that our goal is to acquire this assemblage of lots, which is not a very easy undertaking, getting multiple sellers and multiple parcels of
It's been
land.
challenging, yeah.
So our goal is to be obviously a long-term presence here.
Oh,
in the community.
absolutely.
That's,
Absolutely.
okay.
To build the dialysis unit, supplies, et cetera, you're talking $3-4 million, maybe even a little bit more. So it'd be a long-term relationship.
So we know that at max, we can service 18 patients at a time at
Correct.
max capacity. We might have 7 or 8 employees in the building at max capacity. We know ultimately it might be a Monday through Saturday operation.
That is correct.
What would the hours of operations be
The
for
hours-
staff and then for patients, would you
Yeah,
anticipate?
there would be 2 patient shifts, so the first the first staff would come in probably around 5:30 to about 1:30, 2:30. The second shift of staff would come in probably around 1 o'clock, so there might be an overlap at that point with some employees. They leave around 9 o'clock, 9:30. There'd be 3 patient shifts. One would probably start at 6, another at 11, 12, and the other one about 3 o'clock. And we should be finished by 9 o'clock, 9:30.
So speaking of hours, there's no instances where we would open overnight on an emergency basis,
No.
are there? Okay.
No. And the emergencies, the patients would be transported either to Robert Wood or St. Peter's, depending on the preference of the nephrologist and or patient.
So there's no possibility that an ambulance could come in here with the siren blazing, bringing someone here to us who's going through
Oh,
kidney
no.
failure?
No. Any acute dialysis or acute failure is treated at the hospital. We're strictly outpatients, patients that are stable and don't require that type of therapy. That would be done in the hospital.
And we foresee, I believe it's 3 instances a year where we might need to open on a Sunday due to a national holiday preceding.
Yeah, the 3 holidays that we open on Sunday are Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's.
And that's
All the
because,
other holidays will open on that holiday.
and that's because the patient couldn't go that long without treatment, I
Correct.
suppose?
Correct.
For the next week?
Correct.
Okay.
So we rearrange the schedule so that the therapy that's needed and required will meet the needs of the patient, again, under the auspices of a physician's prescription.
Last thing, Bob, you heard me proffer to the board that notwithstanding the parking shortfall that we have under the code, our type of use is very peculiar and specific to not really generating all that much of a need of parking demand. You're aware that we have a parking shortfall, but we have a commitment from the New Brunswick Parking Authority to offer us off-site spaces as needed for our employees. We're amenable to that if the board were to condition our approval upon that. Is that right?
That would be excellent, sure,
Okay,
sure.
that's fine. Mr. Chairman, that's all we have at this time.
Any member? Well, go ahead.
About the off-site parking facility, where is it located?
It's gotta be in here. It's gotta be in here.
Morris, right? Morris Street deck. Yep.
Yeah,
And
that would be good.
with the parking that you have, and you're talking about drop-offs, do you have a separate area that is just for drop-offs where people aren't going to be, in other words, if I want to go park, I'm going in one direction, a drop-off is that
Yeah, the
location?
drop-off area is separate from the parking area.
Okay. You're talking about you have tractor trailer coming in once every other week.
At the onset, yes.
And what's the reason behind, what
Well,
are they bringing?
they bring a lot of dialysis supplies. A dialysate comes in 55-gallon containers.
Right.
And then from time to time, they have to bring equipment in, et cetera.
Didn't you say they're gonna be smaller box trucks, not 55,
Yeah, that would be-
18 wheelers, right? They're not gonna be 18 wheelers, right?
No, that would be for the medical waste. Now, as I said, like medications and things of that nature, something that's needed overnight is usually delivered via parcel post.
Right, but the tractor trailer would be every other week initially.
Yeah, and that could be scheduled,
And I don't believe, I believe you're saying they're gonna be smaller trucks, like 24, 36-foot trucks, not 18 wheelers coming in these big ones, or will they be?
It could be.
It could be.
That's what
yeah,
they're called.
and they would come in during normal operating hours, you know, during the daytime, usually between 9 and 5.
And is there a place for the outside of traffic to also contents?
We believe there is, and our traffic engineer has
Okay.
looked at that through and through, and he would love to testify tonight. He's about to stand up right now, I think, but he's not getting up right now. You'll hear thorough testimony. That's always a major consideration when we've got loading and unloading.
Okay.
We think from experience, it's a simple maneuver and it's relatively quick, and we can control the times, but, you know, you folks need to make sure it works as well, so.
And the other questions I have that may not be for you, but Number one, garbage pickup, and then the second thing, when you've got people coming in and out from 5:30 in the morning to 21:30 hours, 9:30 at night, what about the residential area around there? Is there something to block those headlights from overlapping into surrounding areas? And I don't know if that would be your testimony or somebody else's.
Our traffic engineer, our planner, could probably get into that more in detail, yeah. Our parking fields are unique, as you've seen on the plans, we have multiple locations for our parking fields, so we'll be able to get that to you with our other witnesses, I think.
And I failed to mention, our supplies are kept inside too. There'll be nothing on the outside, like the dialysate, those drums, they're all brought inside.
All right. Anyone want to talk about that?
Yeah, so getting back to the parking, the first, I guess, provision you had was for 9 spaces. What did you bump it up to with this additional lot that you purchased?
We're up to 16 on site now.
16.
16, yeah. And the commitment from the parking authority was generous. When I was speaking with the executive director, I said, look, we think 15 might be a magic number for us because when we're at max employee shift, let's say an employee shift is completely overlapped with another employee shift, we might have 15 employees at any given time. Sure, I'll give you 15 spaces at the Morris Street lot, not a problem. So we could certainly secure more. We don't think you're ever going to see more than that many staff at any given time in our facility.
Right, but it's not including the patients that are going to be, some, I assume, drive themselves.
There are some that drive, yeah,
So
very
because
few.
I can be dropped off and left, so I'm sure the audience here is going to realize that the parking is the big issue of this
Sure.
whole.
Historically, Bob, the percentage of patients that drive themselves is what percentage?
Maybe 30%. That's like a rough number. It depends on the unit, it depends on the condition of the patient. And we really encourage patients, obviously, not to drive. We prefer that they be brought in by some other means than driving themselves.
And as a practical matter, what's the reason for, it's an energy depletion issue with the patient, right? The reason that,
Especially after dialysis treatments, patients sometimes become weak, the blood pressure may fluctuate. They can drive, but again, we encourage them not to drive. If there's ever a reason why the physician thinks the patient shouldn't drive, that is driving, then we'll address that internally and we'll discuss that with the patient.
Would you be amenable to say, if parking started getting tight, that immediately your employees would be the ones at the parking garage and leaving
No.
an X number of spaces open to patients?
that's the plan all along, as a
Yes,
matter of fact.
yes.
Our plan all along is to put staff off-site,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yes.
All right.
So everything on-site remains for patients, and candidly, while I'm not testifying, we've done dozens of medical facilities for dialysis. They're barely ever parked. Patients don't tend to drive themselves. Out of 18 chairs, even if you have 50% driving themselves, you might have 9 spaces used.
Yeah.
And 50% would be an anomaly. I don't think you'd ever see that, but all 16 are intended to be, all 16 on-site are intended to be available for our patients. Yeah.
Any other questions?
No.
Go ahead.
Mr. Kelly, you'll have to just submit some sort of documentation from the parking authority relative to the availability and the fact that you've reserved or leased or whatever those spaces. Can I keep this for the file?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what you've got is the April 24th letter from the parking authority committing to 15 spaces, about 200 feet from our site, in Morris Street lot. We could certainly secure more. We think 15 is probably overkill, candidly, but it's enough to secure every single one of our employees, assuming every employee overlaps at a shift at that peak moment.
Mark that as A1.
And I can send that digitally to Dan too as well, so you've got it in
Please.
iCloud.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one question. I just want to confirm that the block and lots that are the subject of the application is block 126, lots 3.01, 7, and 8.01. Is there another lot or
Yes.
lots that are being acquired?
It's lot 10. Lot 10 is 54 Beale, and lot 10 was the last lot included on the resubmission a few weeks ago. And lot 10 is what ended up securing us an additional number of parking spaces to get from 9 to the 16.
Was this added to the notice list?
Yes.
Okay. If I could just have that provided as well.
Sure.
the
I think
notice
it's in the affidavit you have, but I can send it to you again tomorrow if you like. But the affidavit you have has lot 10 on there, notice for it, and then the amended application documents as well, reference lot 10.
Anyone else have any questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to open it to the public now for any questions of Mr. Mataki? I anticipate he'll be returning with us, but
No,
Not sure.
we'll hold that for the next meeting when we open it to the public for everybody.
we happen to know when the board might have us back?
That would be May 20th, 2019.
So, Mr. Cali, here's our calendar for the next
Yep.
couple meetings. The board does have a regularly scheduled meeting on May 20th. That meeting already has 3 applications that are tentatively scheduled. And frankly, even if we added you to that meeting, I don't know if we would get to you as the 4th by the end of the night. So the next available meeting would be June 24th.
Yes.
So if I may, if we carry tonight to May 20th and things drop off, any other matters between now and then, we're fine on notice. If we go to June and things drop off, we'd have to renotice to try to get in here in May. So perhaps we can be on the agenda for May with the understanding that we won't get carried. I'm making a call from the board attorney saying, don't show up, we're never going to reach you. But at least if we're carried on the record tonight to the May 20th meeting, we have a shot, assuming other maybe notice is flubbed on another matter, maybe something carries, you never know. So we'd ask to be carried to May 20th with the understanding that we might very well not get reached.
And it's very, frankly, it's very likely that we wouldn't get to you, but
Right, I
we
understand.
can certainly try
I
to make the
understand.
accommodations.
We have obligations under our acquisition for these properties to diligently pursue the approvals and entitlements, and closing dates are goals, but nevertheless goals. So I understand it's ambitious, but we're trying to hopefully conclude as soon as we can. So I realize the reality, and we may very well be at the 24th, but
Anyone else have anything? No? Okay.
we're good.
Then we'll hopefully see you next month.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.